Hello, and welcome to The Knowing Show. I am your host, Christine Marie, and today we are talking about the integration of AI and human intelligence and how do we allow for this new age, this new rise of this technology not to take out you and me, but how can we actually really harness it and leverage it? And the guest for today, Kelly Sundsvold, I'm so excited to have you here today. You know, one of the things that makes the topic and conversation around AI even more meaningful is when there's a real human experience associated with it, both in terms of knowing how to leverage it in a way that makes our lives literally better, but also where we know how to harness it and use it for the good and amplification of what's already working, especially when we have some kind of emotional connections to what we're doing. And Kelly, you started your business kind of rooted in a trauma, so to say. Is that fair?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I'd actually like to start there. Thank you so much for joining us. And before we get into the AI side of things, I'd actually like for you to give some context around how Gold Bear Media started in the first place.
yeah. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited to get to talk to you and all the followers.
Likewise.
Yeah, so in 2019, in January, my husband, it happened out of the blue. It was a week of pain for him, excruciating pain in his back. He went to countless hospitals, urgent cares, trying to get an answer to it. It was to the point where he was literally sweating bullets. His voice was quivering. I mean, we're talking excruciating pain. And finally, one day he was coming back from, you're familiar with Maryland. He was driving across the Chesapeake Bay, driving back up to, we live in Northern Maryland. And he went to go get out of his car and he fell. And it was January. So there was like ice in the ground. He's like, okay, what happened here? And come to find out, his legs, like he was paralyzed from the waist down. And he was like, what
Whoa.
in the world? And so, of course, still in that excruciating pain. And so he sat there and he was like, okay, I have a couple of options here. I can either get back in my car, drive myself to the hospital, climb up to the house. So he chose to drive himself to the hospital. And when he got there, somebody was thankfully in the parking lot and he asked for a wheelchair,
Wow.
rushed in. And after lots and lots of testing, they figured out that he had a spinal abscess that had got lodged in his spine, and he
Mm.
had to be flown to shock trauma for emergency back surgery. And they were like, if you make it out alive, you may walk again. I mean, it was like that serious, like everything horrible you could ever imagine. He was 40 years old. We have 4 kids. I mean, it was terrifying. And so I drove down to shock trauma, sat there for all day. I didn't get home until much later to check on the kids. And, I'll never forget when the doctor came out and was like, the surgery was successful, but we really don't know what's going to happen. We
Wow.
sent, yes. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So he spent the next 2 weeks in shock trauma, and then he was released to rehab. And at that point, he had really no feeling, no functioning below the waist. And through rehab, he was starting to do like little exercises, but it's not like what you and I can do, obviously. But like he was trying to like raise his leg.
Mm.
And So came home, lots of PT, lots of OT. If he was to walk in this room, he would look, you wouldn't know he had this backstory, because he's able to do everything. He was very, very lucky. He was fully paralyzed for about 12 hours. And then after that is when the nerves could start healing. And funny thing out of all this, he lost his ability to run. So he can't run. And roller skating is out also.
Wow.
So he's lost a couple of things. He's got some lingering nerve damage, but he's very grateful to be alive. And so all of 2019, he was out of work, and I was the primary provider at that point, and I have had a career in marketing. So did that, supporting the family, and we got to the end of 2019, and I mean, we are a 2-income household for a reason. And so we had accumulated a lot of debt. And so
Yeah.
I'm really a believer that hardships and crisis sometimes give way to creativity.
Mm,
You try to find those solutions that um, that can work. You're in a moment of hardship or in struggle, and you're like, okay, what can I do here?
yeah.
And I was like, you know what, I can do graphic design on the nights and weekends. And 2020 rolls around, and I got my first
Mhm.
client in February, and it was just such a blessing.
Wow.
And then I got another client in March, and then the pandemic shut everything down.
Wow.
And it was just, like, we felt very, very fortunate. We knew that there was a lot of people that were struggling, but our business completely took off.
Wow.
People
I
were,
love that.
yeah. Like, we had just come out of a really hard time. I think it would have been even harder if we had
Mm,
2020, but people wanted to go online. And so I got calls out of the woodwork. And it was just such a surreal thing. It just really
wow.
was. I was like, wow, maybe I could do something with this. And that's
Mm.
really how Gold Bear started. It just really started out of a crisis. And it
Wow.
exploded.
I'm gonna take that line because there's so much in there. Crisis gives way to creativity. And Kelly, I'd love to actually lean into that a little bit if you would. We've got some questions coming in here in the chat for you, which I'll get to in a few minutes. But first, crisis gives way to creativity, and I'd love to hear more about that because that is so not the opinion of what the kind of the society deems when it's time for crisis. It's time to shut down, put up boundaries, keep people out, go, time to take time for me rather than, and frankly, there's a couple of things that I can think of just off the top of my head of why that's the case. But what really is kind of underneath that? Like, why does crisis give way to creativity? What was the why for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We had, obviously, all of 2019, we had been accumulating debt. Medical debt came in. I mean, he hit maximum by January 30th. On out of pocket our family had been, and so we had just been accumulating this medical debt, and it was just hard. It was really, really hard. And I remember waking up one morning in December, and so this had been going on now for 11, 12 months, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was like, it was just that moment where it was like, because don't get me wrong, I was definitely went through the depression and the like, okay, I don't want to do anything. But I woke up one morning just like, oh my gosh, like this is on me to figure out. Like, it is, I can either, fold over, and not think about a solution. Or I can get creative and think about, like, how can I manage a full-time job, being a care provider for my husband, a mom to 4 kids, and still somewhere there have time for me and bring in more money. Like, how can I do this? And just funny, feet pics were off the table. So it's always like my funny backup plan. But I was like, I didn't want to take anything that was like going to take me away from those responsibilities. And so, things like DoorDash or,
Yeah.
items like that, like a lot of people lean into as supplementary income. And I
Mm,
was like, okay, well, you know what? I got my degree way back then in graphic design, and I can literally do that in the sleep. I wasn't doing that presently in
yeah.
my current job as much. And so it really literally was creative, it was a creative solution, and it was using what was in front of me. And I was always taught, like, what are the tools in your hand? Like, when you're in a crisis, what are the tools in your hand? And that can be abilities, that can be skill sets, that can be degrees, that can be certifications, that can be a computer, what's in your hand that you can do. And so that's really where I got creative. And I was like,
Yeah.
I can be at home with my kids watching anime or whatever they want to watch, and I can sit here at the same time making business plans.
Yes. It's
So
so interesting. I think that for so many who are entrepreneurs, that's really how they got started in some ways. I
Mhm.
mean, even it was interesting. I read, for me, the catalyst of starting my business was I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was like, why am I giving all my money away to my
Yeah.
boss? To, why am I making him all the money? And why am I giving all my money, away out in taxes? And so and then what's interesting is that after starting the business, brokenness did actually come into my life in more so a personal way. But the desperation there drove me to come, form knowing and really kind of find my mission. So whether it's devastation or desperation drives you to start something new or maybe even find the purpose. There's purpose in pain. And there's so much every time, whether it's a new business that comes about or your calling or you come to know who you are, all of those are good outcomes for
Yes.
what would otherwise be something that really would otherwise leave you crumbled.
Exactly. And that's where it comes. And it's okay. Like anyone who's listening, it's okay to have crumble, but it's when you come out of that crumble, what are you going to do? And I definitely had moments of crumble, but it was like I didn't want to let my kids down. I didn't want to lose our house. I didn't want something bad to happen, financially. It was just, I don't know, you got to pick yourself up by the bootstraps at some point, whatever that means to that person.
The bootstrapping piece is something that I think is really, it raises an interesting question. And Kelly, even now as you're talking, I'm thinking about when you have kids that you got to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
There's something, we were talking at first of like, why is it that crisis can lead to creativity? And there's something in that when you've got people who are depending on you. And, it's interesting for those of us who are single or don't have kids, it's really, really easy to forget a why and not have a why to begin with. What's the point? And we just like steep deeper and deeper into even like our own, so like into the pit, into the abyss. Jordan Peterson, I'm not sure if you know who he is. He's is you nodding your head? Psychologist from Canada and professor. And he talks about effectively, you actually do need to go into the abyss, go through the gates of hell to get the keys of redemption. And in the leaning into, to your point, like I'm glad you actually brought that up, that sometimes you actually do need to let yourself crumble, because on the other side of crumbling could very well be the thing, but we have to move through the pain to get to the other side and grab hold of those keys for redemption. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a very real part of the crisis process. Through the pain, we can then access the creativity.
Absolutely. It's like stages of grief almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just going to call out a quick question here. Truth G2S. This is not AI generated, but we're actually going to be talking about AI. A lot of folks are like, is this AI? And Kelly, it's funny. Most questions I get on the show is first, are they AI? Jason just says, are they both AI? No, we're very real.
We are real. I promise.
But it's funny because, when we're looking at business, so kind of moving into this conversation around how do we utilize AI? So obviously you started a marketing, SEO, web design business. Trust is something that is like the highest piece of equity I think a business can have. And Monk Harsh says, I don't think that this is AI. He's right. We're not AI. But it's funny because all of a sudden, Truth.G2S, he brought up AI, and now everyone's like, oh no, is this AI? Is this real? And like, honestly, I want to know if the content that I'm engaging with is genuinely from a real person.
Exactly.
And then my guard goes up, and I immediately, it's like this is what I found, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I think our kind of primal brain kicks in, and we immediately are like, oh, I'm like anti you until you can prove that you're safe. And I think that I'm experiencing that so much more these days when I'm seeing even my own friends, their content on Facebook. I'm like, I don't really want to engage and spend time reading it if that's just something you put into ChatGPT and spitting out. So tell me how you're balancing AI, because I actually do want to talk to you. You're really kind of at the cutting edge for your clients. So how do you maintain Where is AI appropriate? Let's start there.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot to what you just said, which is great. I think it's normal for us to be suspicious. All of us, and if you don't think that, we've all been fooled by AI videos, AI photos. It used to be really comical a couple years ago when they'd hold up their hand and they'd have like six hands or something, or six fingers, like that was really obvious. But AI is moving at such a fast speed that it's improving so much better that it's messing with our brains. We're having a hard time figuring out what's real, what's fake. And it's good. I mean, the content out there that is AI it's tricky. It's very tricky. So yeah, so much of what you said. There in to the question about whether this like appropriate times to use it, appropriate times not to. um we've really embraced, I'm going to preface this, we've really embraced AI in our business. However, we've also really embraced authentic, because what's shining through right now is obviously great content. And there are times to use AI. But what we're finding that shines through is authentic. So it's the selfie videos that don't have the filters all on them. It's the realness of it,
Yes.
and having real photos where, you got a little smudge of something, or, everything's not picture perfect. That
Mm.
AI stuff can't replicate the real. And if you
Yes.
want to really shine through in media, I'm talking like LinkedIn.
Mm.
Um, I've been seeing a lot more LinkedIn headshots as AI photos. And
Yeah.
I'm like, but that's not you, I mean, I don't know.
Mm.
And so that I would say that that's one place where I feel like the authentic really needs to like be real. Like just
Mm.
don't hide behind the filter of AI.
Yes. Don't hide behind the filter of AI.
Yeah.
I think that's honestly a good one-liner. And here's the question: what are we hiding?
Yeah. Exactly. Are we hiding that we aren't going to say things perfectly? Are we going to hide that, we might have like,
Mm.
a little bit of a double chin happening, or,
Yeah. Yeah.
anything like that? Yeah. So it's really a balance between being your
Mm.
authentic self and
Mhm.
being an authentic company, if you're using it as a company, and kind of masking and using it as a crutch rather than a tool.
Mm.
AI
Good.
is a very powerful tool. I am very pro AI. I was like first, Chat GPT, as soon as it came out, I was on there playing around with it.
Yes.
And it's such a powerful tool and can really make your business explode and help
Mhm.
you do that, but not if you're going to do it at the expense of being fake.
Yes. It's so interesting. I was doing a show the other night because I've been going live every day since June. So I think today is like day 226 of going live. And so I've been seeing, it's funny, people are like, blink twice if you're real, wave if you're real. And it's like, even when I do
Yes.
the thing, it's like, and so at the end of the day, here's what's interesting, Kelly, is that because people are so fixated on, is this AI, they actually can't listen to the conversation. They can't listen to what could actually be gleaned from this. And so it's almost like the AI aspect is really getting in the way. And to your point, I think that going live is going to become really, really important.
Yeah.
Once you can get over the hurdle, obviously people are still asking, but once we can get over the hurdle and really start trusting, it's like, okay, this is real. So now we can move on to the real content. Now let's talk about something that's actually meaningful. And you said using it as a tool rather than as a crutch. And
Mhm.
frankly, that concept extends into every area of life. Is religion a crutch or a tool to get to
Mhm.
know God, to get to know me? Is, therapy a crutch or a tool to keep us stagnant and in the same place and just making ourselves feel better? Every single thing in our life, is that question. Is this a crutch or a tool? Am I actually using it to hide? And so to that point, I'd like to actually talk a little bit about, what are the AI practices that you're putting into place for your clients right now that are really making big gains and big changes in their business?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple areas that we're utilizing it. And again, there's a human behind all of this, and there's a human looking at all this before we give it to the client. But one of the big areas that we adopted pretty quick was with our project management system, and automating a lot of those aspects. We have the fortunate, our company's on Monday.com. That's our project management tool. No, I don't get affiliate. I don't have paid for this. But regardless, whichever project management tool you have, there's probably AI integrations. And every single time a new AI tool comes out, with that, we're testing it out. Is this right for our business right now? For instance, they just released, I believe last week, they released a lead generation tool that can automatically call people as an AI agent. We looked at that and we said, do we want to be cold calling people as an AI agent? And we ultimately decided, no, that wasn't the direction that we wanted to take our business. And we did not want to outsource cold calling to AI at this point. That's not something that we wanted to do.
Yeah.
But as far as for our clients, they love it from the standpoint of our clients get a Monday board. They get the access to be able to see what projects we're working on, and it's able to update in real time. We use several other tools. We have a scheduling program for our social media. Obviously, there's email in there. We have Slack. All of those things have Zapier, either Zapier agents or AI agents that will automate those tasks for us, or we'll use Zapier connections where do this, then this happens. But the AI agents have been something that we've been exploring probably in the last 2 months. I built my first agent in January to do some simple tasks for me that, like, I could have hired someone to do this, but is this really where I want to spend our money? Are we going to get our ROI? We're a small business. It's me, my husband. We have an amazing executive assistant that we've invested into, that is a part of our team and part of our growth. We have a graphic designer, and then our daughter is our project manager. And
I love that. I really do. I was looking at your website and it said, what is her name?
Hannah.
I love that.
Yeah. She's 22. And so she's a baker full time, but then does some part-time work for us. So she's pursuing her dream, but also learning some other skill sets along the way, which is important. And she's very process driven. And so we were like, hey,
come help us.
Yes. And you get to learn some skills. Yeah. So every time there was a new thing, she's always like, Mom, did you see? And I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. But yeah, we've really been able to streamline the client communication. I would say that's a number one way that we use it, is client communication and making sure that things are delivered to them on time, that the process is communicated with them. We're not leaving them hanging. We're like, hey, where's this project at? We're able to give them real-time updates, and our AI agents are able to do that for us, so that our team can focus on the strategy, can focus on building the business, and our clients are taken care of from the communication standpoint.
What were some of the hiccups or concerns? And you know what? I've got to tell you, Kelly, I just have to apologize. I am so incredibly sorry. My battery is going to die. My computer's going to die. I'm going to go grab my charge cord, and I'd love for you to answer this question for everyone listening. So I'm sorry, this has never happened. I'd love to know, what were some of the roadblocks that your clients ran into? What were some of their fears and concerns? Because I'm sure that since they have back-end access to the dashboards you all are putting together, I don't know, were there any constraints or fears on their end with you guys starting to implement AI? And I'm going to take my computer with me and turn my camera off. So I will be right back, but I'm going to be listening. So keep going.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good question. There is hesitancy I would say socially, from an AI perspective, like just human to human. There's obviously, we talked about being skeptical of like whether or not even this was real. And you can probably guess by now it is. It's there's concern of like AI is taking my jobs. We just wrote a blog on this last month. AI is taking our jobs. No, it's not. It's being a tool to allow us to be able to do other things. Now, sure, did it take the job of the client communication, like what I just shared before? Yes, but that wasn't anybody's job. We're a small business. We hadn't hired anyone for that. I was doing that myself as the owner. So yeah, no, it didn't take anyone's job, but I did utilize that in our business. So the other, yay for power.
Yeah, I know.
Another reason you're not an AI person, right?
Someone, it's so funny. Someone says charge cord. Yeah, we're on to you, AI lady. I'm like, okay. I think sometimes people put those comments in. I don't know, Aussie man, if you're doing this just to get a shout out, but we will call on you if you actually have a real question.
Yes, yeah. So there is some fear. We recently onboarded a client who was like, I don't want any of that AI stuff because they're gonna take down my website. And I was like, no, like we're using AI as a grammar check, for instance, or we can use AI as a resource tool to find to do like some deep dive on SEO content. But there's still such a human element behind that because you're not getting all the information. Same thing with like, the 6 fingers that I was talking about earlier about the silly stuff. Yes, AI is improving, but there's still a human aspect of it that we need to really integrate in. Otherwise, it's just going to sound robotic and very predictable. There's a repetitiveness to AI that is not in humans. Robotic is the only word I can think of. So I would say, yeah, there was some, but we also have some clients. Like we have one client who developed a platform on AI and uses it as their software for as a hiring tool, and he is kicking butt. Like, I mean, it is like rocking the whole hiring system and world because of his AI tool, and we're there to help support him. So he's like, whatever you can do. That was one of his questions. He sat me down. He was like, I want to know what you can do with AI to make your job easier, because that's what I'm looking for, is someone who can take AI to the next level. It's not, I don't want AI, like it's got to be all you. I'm like, you don't, there's some things like you benefit from it, from us using AI.
Okay, so Kelly, we've had a couple people ask about AGI. Is this something that you feel equipped to talk about, that you want to talk about?
What specifically around it? What's the question?
So let me scroll back up. Okay, Richard Copeland says, I can handle using AI, but what is frightening is AGI, because I get the impression AGI can think and perform computational functions way better than mankind.
I mean, it's definitely getting there. Yeah, it's definitely getting there. I've been following this story on, it's more pop culture, but there's a social platform that AI agents have actually set up. It's something like Christene or something like that. And within a couple days, they set up their own religion within this social media platform. It's been really interesting to see. If you're an AI agent, you can get into this platform, but they've been sharing screenshots of what's being discussed. And it's really fascinating. And honestly, one of the questions I had was, as I'm reading these comments, I'm like, why are they all speaking in English? Like, if I was able, I mean, I wouldn't be an AI agent, but like if there was an AI agent that's capable of making its own social platform, able of creating its own religion, why would it not create its own language? So that's
very fascinating. I had oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What an interesting point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like effectively. I mean, yeah, okay. Touche.
Yeah.
Like iRobot, where they like try to take over the world.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, than to have a different language that only AI can understand.
Exactly.
Interesting.
I mean, most of us in the United States are single lingual. I don't know what you call it. Like we can only speak one
Yeah.
language, and so I'm like, that'd be the first thing I would do to confuse the people if I was taking over. And then we start getting into like fan fiction and sci-fi stuff with that. Yes, I do think there is there is a lot of that, what Richard said, where they're able to compute. But I think also you back up, was it 60 years ago when the computers were made? And computers used to be human. That's what you were called. Think about like Hidden Figures, that movie. You had the section that was the computers, and they weren't computers, they were humans doing math problems. And then when the IBM thing came into their room and it was taking up the whole room, someone had to learn that. And yeah, I was able to do that. One computer was able to do probably 20 people's jobs. However, I think again, this is a time for us as humans to reinvent ourselves.
Mm,
So, what are we going to do with that? How are we going to use that as a tool, similar to what they did 60 years ago when the computer came out? You know, what are we going to do with that?
mm.
And all of those computers, those women, or they're mostly women who were computing all that stuff for NASA, like they lost their jobs, but did they really lose their jobs, or were they able to go elsewhere?
Yes. Well, and I mean, we've seen this happen over the years, as Yellow Pages got removed. Some people are still using Yellow Pages, especially for trades. We still have that to an extent, but especially when the internet started, and this is just a different technical revolution. Now, granted, it's massive and it is going to change everything, but it's not. And even if UBI comes in, universal basic income, and it really is the thing that there's a lot of people predicting that.
Mhm.
And this is where to kind of do a full circle moment to come back to, well, what would we be hiding from? Who are we? Because now at the end of the day, with AI coming in and AGI, I mean, I hear I agree with Richard to an extent where it's like, I don't like the sound of that. And we can't, it's going to happen to whatever extent that it will. So how then can I prepare, to your point, learn the tools, become an expert in our own regard so that it can be a tool, not a crutch. But then also let's really come to know, who am I, so that I can stop hiding and really talk about alchemy. I love alchemy. I love this concept of taking something and just making it better. It's effectively what you were able to do when your husband had, I can't even imagine, the spinal abscess. Like, isn't that what it was in the spinal abscess? Like, what the heck? And so you being able to take that time and be like, okay, well, what do I want? I want to be able to stay home with my kids. What do I have? I have this degree, and what's possible, and allowing crisis to breed creativity. So I really appreciate, Kelly, the way that you've gone about how you started the business and how you're adapting it along the way. But you had to know who you were, you had to know your skills, and you had to know what you wanted. And with that, then it's okay, let's work within the triad of this for creativity to come forth and really blow something into life. So,
and there's the human aspect right there, that triad that you were just talking about. That's what separates us between AI, computers, and us as humans.
Kelly, thank you. Thank you so much for joining today. How can people learn more about Gold Bear Media?
Heading to our website is a great opportunity to see that. It's just goldbear.media. I'm also on LinkedIn, Kelly Sundsvold. I'm the only one who can find me and follow me, DM me. I'm happy to connect. Those would be the two best ways.
Wonderful. Kelly, thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. Y'all, I will see you later tonight. I'll be live at probably 9 p.m. Eastern, but thank you all so much for joining. I loved this conversation.